Chosen one. Are you tired of counting pennies at 2 a.m., wondering if God has forgotten your address? Have you ever sat in your kitchen, staring at bills stacked like tombstones, asking yourself if this is how your golden years were supposed to feel? Do you lie awake some nights, listening to your heart pound, wondering if you'll outlive your savings, or if your savings will outlive you? Listen to me very carefully. I don't know if you're sitting on your front porch right now, watching the world go by, or lying in bed at 3 a.m., wrestling with worries that feel heavier than your bones. Maybe you're in that old recliner, the one that holds all your prayers and tears, wondering if heaven is even listening anymore. But if this message has found you tonight, and I mean really found you, pulled you in like a divine magnet, it's not because of any algorithm, it's not coincidence. This is a sacred interruption. God himself pressed pause on your evening to deliver you a message that will shatter every financial fear you've carried. Chosen one. Stop worrying. God is funding your life from now on. Your hands may feel empty tonight, but heaven's vault is overflowing with provision that has your name written on it in golden letters. The worry that's been eating at your peace, the sleepless nights calculating if you'll have enough, the quiet shame of needing help at this stage of life, it ends here. It ends now. There's something I need to show you, something that will unlock in your spirit, like a key turning in a door you thought was sealed forever. But you must stay with me, because halfway through this message, something supernatural is going to shift in your atmosphere. I've seen it happen to saints just like you, sitting right where you're sitting, carrying the same burdens you're carrying. Before we go deeper, I want to acknowledge every single one of you who has supported this ministry through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just giving. You're sowing seeds of hope into lives that feel forgotten. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your time, your attention, your open heart, it all matters in this divine moment. But right now, if you feel like this word is burning in your chest, if something deep inside is saying this is for me, I need you to type in the comments, I receive this divine funding. Let the heavens bear witness to your declaration, because what happens next is going to change everything. The empty feeling in your stomach when you check your bank balance, the shame of asking your children for help, the fear that whispers you're too old for miracles. God is about to prove them all wrong. Stay with me. Why does it feel like every month the bills grow taller while your income stays the same? Why does your heart skip a beat every time you open that Medicare statement or see another final notice in the mail? And why, after a lifetime of faithfulness, does it feel like God has put you on financial hold while blessing everyone else around you? I see you, dear one. I see you sitting at that kitchen table at midnight, calculator in one hand, stack of bills in the other, wondering how you're going to stretch Social Security another 2 weeks. The grocery store has become a battlefield where you choose between medications and meals. The gas station feels like a casino where you're always betting against empty. You've been carrying bills like boulders on your back, while hope floats around you like vapor, visible for a moment, then gone with the next gust of bad news. That worry, it's become a silent roommate in your soul, keeping you company through sleepless nights, whispering lies about your worth and God's faithfulness. Let me speak directly into that ache you carry. You worked 40, 50, maybe 60 years. You paid your taxes, raised your children, served your community, tithed faithfully when times were good. You played by every rule society handed you. You believed that if you just worked hard enough, saved smart enough, planned carefully enough, your golden years would actually be golden. But here you are, and the gold has turned to rust. The cost of everything has doubled while your fixed income stayed frozen in time. Rent that used to take a quarter of your check now devours half of it. Groceries that once cost $30 now run you $90. And don't even mention what it costs to keep a car running or get your teeth fixed. You watch your adult children struggling with their own families, their own mortgages, their own mountains of debt, and you swallow the words, "I need help," because you refuse to be another burden they have to carry. So you suffer in silence, rationing pills, skipping meals, choosing between heat and electricity. The cruelest part? You've started believing the lie that this is what you deserve, that somehow God is punishing you for something, that your prayers bounce off the ceiling because you're too old, too irrelevant, too forgotten to matter to heaven anymore. Listen to me, that's not the voice of your Father. That's the voice of the enemy who wants you to die in despair instead of living in abundance. The Bible tells us in Psalm 71:9, "Do not cast me away when I am old. Do not forsake me when my strength is gone." David knew what you're feeling, the fear that God moves on to younger, more productive vessels, the terror that your usefulness has expired. But David also knew something else. In verse 18 of that same psalm, he cries out, "Even when I am old and grey, do not forsake me, my God, till I declare your power to the next generation." God doesn't retire his chosen ones. He refines them. Every night you've laid in that bed, staring at the ceiling, calculating if you'll have enough money to last until your last breath. That wasn't wasted time. That was preparation time. Every tear you've cried over unpaid bills, every prayer you've whispered into the darkness begging for relief, heaven has been collecting every single one. You see, what looks like delay to your human eyes is actually divine strategy. God hasn't forgotten you. He's been preparing something so massive, so supernatural, so beyond your ability to orchestrate that when it arrives, there will be no doubt it came from his hand alone. But right now, the weight feels unbearable, doesn't it? You wake up and the first thought isn't gratitude for another day, it's anxiety about what bill you can't pay. You go to bed, and instead of peaceful rest, you're haunted by numbers that don't add up and futures that look frightening. Some nights you've even wondered if it would be easier to just not wake up. If the people you love would be better off without having to worry about taking care of you. If God would understand if you just quietly slipped away rather than face another day of financial terror. But what if I told you that every night you chose to keep breathing was an act of faith that moved heaven? What if every morning you dragged yourself out of bed despite the despair was actually you declaring to the spiritual realm that you still believe God has something more for you? What if I told you the wait was preparation, not punishment? You've been in a spiritual holding pattern, circling the airport of your breakthrough, waiting for divine clearance to land. But clearance is coming. The control tower of heaven is about to guide you in for a landing so smooth, so perfectly timed, so abundantly supplied that everyone watching will know this was orchestrated by the master pilot himself. If you've ever laid in bed wondering how you'd make it through another month, another year, another medical emergency, right, that was me in the comments right now. You are not alone in this struggle. You are not the first saint to wonder if God remembers your address. And you will not be the last to discover that his provision was being prepared in secret while you suffered in silence. There's a shift coming, beloved. A divine transaction, a supernatural transfer from heaven's economy to your earthly reality. And you're not late for it. You're right on time. The question isn't whether God can fund your life. The question is, are you ready to stop worrying and start receiving? You know what breaks my heart? I've met too many saints who've spent their entire lives serving God faithfully, only to find themselves in their golden years whispering prayers over unpaid bills, feeling like they've been forgotten by the very God they've loved so deeply. But tonight, I'm here to shatter that lie. See, there's a fundamental difference between provision and funding. Provision gives you just enough to get by. Provision is scraping together grocery money. Provision is making it through another month by the skin of your teeth. But funding? Funding is different. Funding is backing. Funding is investment. Funding is when someone believes in your mission so deeply that they cover all the costs because they know the outcome is guaranteed. And tonight, I need you to understand something that will revolutionize how you see your relationship with the Almighty. You are not applying for a loan from heaven. You are cashing heaven's check. A check that was written before you were born, signed in the blood of Jesus, and deposited the moment you said yes to your calling. The currency of your calling isn't dollars, it's divine trust. Think about this for a moment. When God called Moses to lead 2 million people out of Egypt, did he say, "Good luck finding food in the desert"? When he called Noah to build an ark, did he say, "Figure out how to afford the lumber"? When he commissioned Solomon to build the temple, did he say, "Hope you can raise enough funds"? No, every divine assignment comes with divine provision. But you're not just getting provision, you're getting full funding for your mission. Let me tell you about Joseph. One day he's rotting in Pharaoh's prison, forgotten and forsaken. The next day, in a single moment, he goes from prisoner to treasurer of the entire Egyptian empire. Not gradually, not through a 10-year career plan, instantly. Why? Because when God funds your life, he doesn't play by the world's timeline. Ruth was gleaning leftover grain in someone else's field, picking up scraps just to survive. But by the end of her story, she wasn't just working in the field, she owned it. She went from poverty to property ownership because God doesn't just meet your needs, he positions you to meet other people's needs. And what about Elijah? During the worst famine in Israel's history, when people were dying of starvation, God had ravens, delivering prime rib to his prophet twice a day. While the world was starving, Elijah was feasting. Not because he was special, but because he was funded by a God who owns cattle on 1,000 hills. You need to hear me clearly. The moment you stop worrying about how it's going to happen, the divine transfer begins. But here's what's happening to so many of you right now. You've been conditioned by a world that operates on scarcity to believe that struggling is normal, that barely making it is the Christian way, that poverty is somehow holy. That's not the gospel. That's religious poverty mentality that has robbed the church of its power for generations. Jesus said, "I have come that they might have life, and have it abundantly." Not barely, not just enough, abundantly. So why are you still living like you're on spiritual welfare when you're heirs to the kingdom? I'll tell you why. Because you've been striving instead of flowing. You've been working in your own strength instead of resting in his grace. You've been calculating with earthly mathematics instead of operating in heavenly economics. But God's economy doesn't function like Wall Street. In God's economy, your greatest qualification is your willingness to trust him. Your biggest asset is your obedience. Your strongest currency is your faith. And tonight, if you've been faithful, and I know you have, if you've been serving quietly, giving sacrificially, loving unconditionally, even when nobody noticed, then this word is specifically for you. The widow who kept giving her last 2 coins. Jesus didn't just commend her, he revealed that she had given more than all the rich people combined because she understood kingdom economics. Martha from Georgia wrote to tell me that at 73, after her husband passed and left her with medical bills she couldn't pay, she was ready to lose her home. But the morning she decided to trust God completely, not just pray about it, but truly surrender the outcome, she received a call from a lawyer. A distant relative she'd never met had left her an inheritance, not just enough to pay the bills, enough to secure her future and bless her grandchildren. Robert from Ohio, 68 years old, had his small business fail during the pandemic. Everything was gone. But instead of despairing, he declared that God was his provider. Within 3 months, 3 different companies were bidding for his consulting services. He went from broke to breakthrough because he stopped striving and started flowing. These aren't fairy tales. These are testimonies of saints who discovered what you're about to discover tonight. You are no longer living on scraps. You are entering overflow. The worry that has been keeping you up at night, it's about to become obsolete. The fear that whispers, "What if there's not enough?" is about to be silenced by the voice that declares, "My God shall supply all your needs according to his riches in glory." But I need you to make a declaration right now. I need you to stop being a passive recipient and become an active receiver. Type these words in the comments. I am fully funded by heaven's economy. Say it out loud. Let your neighbors hear it. Let your doubts hear it. Let the enemy hear it. Because when you declare what heaven has already decreed, earth has no choice but to align. You see, there's something brewing in the spiritual realm right now. Angels are being dispatched. Provision is being released. Divine connections are being orchestrated. And it's all flowing toward you, because God is not just interested in your survival, He's invested in your success. But here's the question that will determine whether you receive this or let it pass you by. Are you ready to stop begging and start believing? You know what breaks my heart? It's watching beautiful souls like you sit in coffee shops, staring out windows, whispering to themselves, "I guess it's too late now." Too late for what, precious one? Too late to see God move mountains. Too late to witness miracles. Too late to step into the dreams that once made your heart race at 3 a.m. Let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. That dream you buried under decades of being practical, that vision you sketched in a notebook 20 years ago and then stuffed in a drawer because life got hard, that calling you felt burning in your chest when you were 40, 50, 60 years old. God didn't forget it. He's been keeping it warm. Your dream wasn't denied, it was placed on layaway by heaven. And today, God is walking into the cosmic store with his credit card, ready to pay in full. You think it's too late? Abraham was 99 when God promised him nations. Moses was 80 when he faced Pharaoh. Grandma Moses didn't pick up a paintbrush until she was 78 and became one of America's most celebrated artists. Colonel Sanders was 65 when he franchised Kentucky Fried Chicken. But here's what's really going to blow your mind. You want to know why your dream felt impossible all these years? Because God wasn't ready to fund it yet. You weren't ready to handle the magnitude of what he wanted to release through you. Those years of waiting, those weren't wasted years. Those were preparation years. God has been building your character, deepening your faith, strengthening your spirit for the weight of the blessing he's about to release. The Bible says in Psalm 37-23, "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way." Ordered. Not suggested, not hoped for. Ordered. Every step you've taken, every detour, every closed door, every disappointment, it was all orchestrated to position you for this moment. What you wrote down in that notebook 20 years ago, God still has it pinned on his wall in heaven's boardroom. What you prayed for in secret, it's been marinating in divine timing. What you dreamed about while washing dishes, folding laundry, sitting in church pews, heaven has been constructing the infrastructure to support it. You want to know why that dream never left you? Why it keeps knocking on the door of your heart even now? Because divine assignments don't expire. They don't have expiration dates. They don't become obsolete just because you turned 70, 75, 80 years old. That restaurant you wanted to open, that book you wanted to write, that ministry that kept stirring in your spirit, that business idea that made you feel alive, that's not nostalgia calling. That's prophecy knocking. And here's the shocking truth that's going to make some of you weep right where you're sitting. The reason you couldn't make it happen before wasn't because you lacked talent, vision, or even opportunity. It was because divine timing protects divine assignments. God has been waiting for the exact moment when your obedience intersects with his provision. That moment is now. You see, when God funds a dream, it doesn't just succeed, it explodes. When heaven backs a vision, it doesn't just work, it transforms lives, communities, generations. The delay wasn't denial, it was divine strategy. Think about this. How many times did you try to force that dream to happen through your own strength? How many doors did you knock on, only to have them slam in your face? How many times did you wonder if you heard God wrong? You didn't hear him wrong. You were just early. But now the stars are aligning. Now the timing is perfect. Now the resources are being released. Now the connections are being divinely orchestrated. Now the favor is being activated. God didn't forget the dream. He's about to finance it. I can feel some of you trembling right now because something deep inside is saying, This is it. This is my time. That trembling isn't fear, it's recognition. Your spirit is remembering what your mind tried to forget. You're not too old to start over. You're too anointed to stay stuck. The question isn't whether God can still use you. The question is, will you let him? Will you dust off that dream? Will you open that notebook? Will you dare to believe that the best chapters of your life are still unwritten? What was the dream you buried? I need you to type it in the comments right now, not tomorrow, not next week, right now. This is your resurrection moment. This is where the dead dream gets CPR from heaven itself. Because what I'm about to show you next is going to prove that God isn't just remembering your dream, he's been preparing to finance it beyond your wildest imagination. Listen to me very carefully, dear one. What I'm about to tell you isn't theory. It isn't wishful thinking. It isn't some feel-good motivational speech to make you temporarily feel better about your circumstances. This is a prophetic declaration over your life. Right now, as you're listening to these words, there's a supernatural shift happening in the invisible realm that's about to manifest in your physical reality. You might not see it yet, but heaven's financial department just processed your case. The struggle that's been your unwelcome companion for months, maybe years, is being terminated today. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? That gnawing anxiety that wakes you up at 4 a.m. when the house is silent and your mind starts calculating. Will the Social Security check cover the medications this month? Can you afford to keep the heat on when winter hits? Should you tell your daughter you can't afford Christmas gifts this year? But something unusual is stirring in your spirit right now, isn't it? There's a peace you can't explain. You've been feeling it for days, maybe weeks. It doesn't make sense based on your bank statement, but it's there, deep, quiet, unshakable. That's not wishful thinking, dear one. That's heaven, downloading new software into your spiritual operating system. And the signs. Oh, the signs are everywhere if you know how to look. Money showing up in odd places, a $20 bill in an old coat pocket you haven't worn in months, a check in the mail you weren't expecting, a credit on your account that nobody can explain. These aren't coincidences. These are heaven's calling cards, letting you know the system change is already in progress. People calling out of nowhere, old friends reaching out, opportunities presenting themselves without you lifting a finger, doors cracking open that have been sealed shut for years, your phone ringing with possibilities you never pursued but somehow found you anyway. Do you see what's happening? You've been living under the wrong economic system. For too long, you've been trying to survive under Wall Street's rules, where your worth is determined by your portfolio, your credit score, your retirement account balance. But God just transferred you out of that failing system. You're no longer under Wall Street. You're under heaven's economy. And in heaven's economy, the rules are completely different. Your provision isn't based on market fluctuations. Your security isn't tied to economic forecasts. Your future isn't held hostage by inflation rates or political uncertainty. In Philippians 4:19, Paul declares something that will revolutionize how you think about money. And my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. Did you catch that? Not according to your work history. Not according to your age. Not according to the economic climate. According to his riches in glory. The checks are being signed in heaven right now, and they bear your name. But here's what most people don't understand about this shift. It's not just about money appearing. It's about the complete reversal of how provision flows in your life. What you used to chase is now being commanded to find you. Think about that for a moment. For years, you've been chasing opportunities, chasing security, chasing enough, running after provision, like it was playing hard to get. But when God funds your life, the flow reverses. Provision starts chasing you. Resources begin tracking you down like a divine GPS has been activated on your life. Opportunities start hunting for you. Solutions begin seeking you out. You become a magnet for the very things you've been desperately trying to attract through your own effort. This is what Jesus meant in Matthew 6:33 when he said, But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. The word given there doesn't mean you have to ask for them. It means they're automatically transferred to your account when you align with kingdom principles. You're not going to have to beg for your breakthrough anymore. You're not going to have to convince anyone to bless you. You're not going to have to manipulate circumstances or people to get what you need. The shift is here. The supernatural is replacing the struggle. I need you to say this aloud, right where you are. Don't whisper it. Declare it with the authority of someone who knows their Father owns everything. The struggle is over. The shift is here. Did you feel that? That wasn't just words leaving your mouth. That was a divine decree being registered in heaven's courts. That was you agreeing with what God has already determined about your financial future. But let me tell you something that's going to sound controversial, maybe even shocking. Your struggle served a purpose. Those sleepless nights weren't wasted. Those times when you had to choose between medication and groceries weren't punishment. They were preparation. God was developing your character in the crucible of lack so you could handle abundance without it corrupting your heart. He was teaching you to trust him when you couldn't see the way, so you'd know how to walk by faith when he opens floodgates you can't even imagine yet. Every tear you've cried over financial pressure has been collected in heaven's bottles. Every prayer you've whispered in desperation has been recorded in golden books. And now, the supernatural compensation is being released. Something unusual is about to happen after this part. I can sense it in the spirit as I speak these words. There's a moment coming in this message where the atmosphere is going to shift so dramatically that you'll feel it in your body. Stay with me. Don't you dare click away now, because what happens next is going to prove to you that this isn't just inspirational speaking. This is prophetic activation. And you're about to step into a realm of provision that defies every natural law you've ever known. The question isn't whether God can fund your life. The question is, are you ready to live like someone whose bills are paid by heaven itself? You know what divine funding feels like. It feels like exhaling after holding your breath for 30 years. Picture this with me for a moment. You wake up tomorrow morning, and instead of that familiar knot in your stomach, that weight that settles in before your eyes even open, there's something different. There's peace. Not the kind you have to manufacture through positive thinking, but the kind that comes from knowing, deep in your bones, that you are covered. You shuffle to the kitchen, and as you pour your coffee, you realize something extraordinary has happened. You're not calculating, you're not counting, you're not wondering if you can afford the good coffee this week. For the first time in decades, your mind is quiet. The bills on your kitchen table, they don't look like enemies anymore. They look like just paper. Because somewhere in your spirit, you know they're already handled. Not by your own strength, not by your careful budgeting, but by a divine economy that operates beyond what your natural eyes can see. Listen to me carefully. When God funds your life, anxiety doesn't just decrease, it becomes obsolete. The scripture says in Philippians 4:19, "My God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus." All, not some, not most, all. But let me tell you what this really looks like in your everyday life. Because I know some of you are thinking, that sounds beautiful, preacher, but my electric bill is still due on Tuesday. When divine funding activates in your life, bills get paid early, not late. Early. You'll find yourself writing checks 3 days ahead of schedule because somehow, some way, the money just appears. Maybe it's an unexpected refund. Maybe it's a check you forgot about. Maybe your grandson calls and says, "Grandma, I want to help with something." You weren't even worried about it, and provision showed up anyway. Your children will start coming home, not just for holidays, but because something in your atmosphere has shifted. The stress that used to radiate from you like heat from a furnace, it's gone, replaced by something they can't name but desperately want to be near. Peace, rest, the kind of calm that only comes when someone is truly, completely taken care of. Those relationships that fractured under financial pressure, watch them mend, because when you're not desperate, you're not grasping. When you're not afraid, you're not controlling. When you know you're provided for, you can love freely again. You thought your best years were behind you. God says your richest years are still ahead. I can see some of you shaking your heads right now. I'm 73 years old. My richest years? Come on. But that's exactly the lie that's been stealing your joy. Age has nothing to do with divine blessing. Abraham received his greatest promise at 100. Moses didn't start his real ministry until he was 80. Sarah laughed when God told her she'd have a baby in her old age, but she stopped laughing when Isaac was born. The devil wants you to believe your season is over. God says it's just beginning. When divine funding flows through your life, you wake up and favor is already in the room, waiting for you like sunshine through your bedroom window. Provision meets you at the door like an old friend you didn't even know was coming. Solutions appear before problems fully form. Your doctor calls with good news about test results you forgot you were worried about. Your insurance company calls to tell you about a refund you weren't expecting. Your mortgage company calls about a program that cuts your payment in half. But that doesn't happen to people like me, you're thinking. Why not? Who told you that? Who convinced you that divine favor was for everyone except you? Here's what I know about you. Sitting there right now, you've prayed more prayers than you can count. You've shed more tears than the ocean holds. You've carried burdens that would have crushed people half your age. You've been faithful when faith hurt. You've praised God when your mouth was full of ashes. Do you really think all of that went unnoticed? Psalm 126:5 says, "Those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy." Your tears weren't wasted. They were seeds, and harvest time is here. This is the season you no longer survive, you thrive. You don't just get by, you overflow. You don't just make it through, you make it rain. Blessings on everyone around you. But here's the truth that will either set you free or make you close this video. You can't receive what you won't believe. You can't walk into divine funding while clinging to divine worry. You have to let go of the fear to grab hold of the favor. If you feel the tears coming right now, let them fall. It's not weakness, it's release. It's your spirit recognizing something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. Those tears are washing away years of financial anxiety. They're making room for something bigger than you've ever dared to imagine. The empty feeling in your bank account is about to be filled. The hollow ache in your chest when bills arrive is about to be replaced with supernatural confidence. The shame of needing help is about to be transformed into the joy of being abundantly provided for. But you have to receive it. You have to open your hands. You have to stop pushing away the very blessing you've been praying for. The question isn't whether God wants to fund your life. He's been trying to get your attention for years. The question is, are you ready to stop worrying and start receiving? Because everything changes when you say yes to divine funding. Everything. And that change starts right now, in this moment, with your next breath. What will it be? Another breath of worry, or your first breath of supernatural provision? You remember those nights, don't you? When the house was quiet and everyone else was asleep, and you found yourself on your knees in the darkness, whispering prayers that felt like they were falling into a black hole. You prayed with tears streaming down your face, begging God for breakthrough, for provision, for just one sign that He hadn't forgotten your address. I'm talking about those raw, desperate prayers, the ones where you couldn't even find pretty words anymore, where you just sobbed and said, "God, I can't do this alone anymore. I need you to show up. I need you to make a way where there is no way." Maybe it was 20 years ago. Maybe it was last month. But you planted those prayers in the soil of sorrow, watered them with your tears, and wondered if anything would ever grow. Here's what you didn't know then. Every single prayer was heard. Every tear was collected. Every cry in the night was recorded in heaven's books. Not one was wasted. Not one was ignored. Look at Hannah in the Bible. For years, she cried out to God for a child. The scripture says she was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. 1 Samuel 1:10. People thought she was drunk because she was so broken, so desperate in her prayers. Year after year, nothing. Empty arms, empty womb, empty hope. But God wasn't saying no, He was saying not yet. He was preparing something so magnificent that when it finally arrived, it would reshape the entire nation of Israel. Hannah's son Samuel became the prophet who would anoint kings and speak the word of the Lord with power. Your prayers weren't in need, beloved. They were being prepared in heaven's warehouse, wrapped in divine timing, sealed with supernatural provision. Think about Abraham. God promised him descendants as numerous as the stars, but 25 years passed. 25 years of waiting, wondering, questioning if he'd heard God correctly. His body grew old. Sarah's womb remained closed. Logic screamed that it was impossible. But at 90 years old, 90, Abraham held his miracle baby in his arms. Isaac wasn't just a child. He was the fulfillment of a covenant that would bless all nations. The wait wasn't punishment. It was preparation for a miracle so big it would defy every natural law. What have you been waiting for? What promise has felt so delayed that you've almost given up hoping? That job that would finally give you security, that healing that would restore your strength, that financial breakthrough that would lift the weight off your shoulders. You're living in the atmosphere of the thing you once thought you'd never reach. I need you to understand something that will shake you to your core. You are not still waiting. You are walking in it right now. The breakthrough you prayed for in 1995, in 2008, in 2020, it's not coming. It's here. It's happening. It's unfolding around you like invisible hands rearranging your reality. That prayer you whispered when you couldn't pay your mortgage, when you sat at the kitchen table with bills spread out like an impossible puzzle, when you wondered if you'd have enough money to last through retirement, God heard that prayer, and He's been working on the answer for years. The provision you need isn't stuck in traffic. It's not delayed by bureaucracy. It's not waiting for the economy to improve. It's already been released from heaven's treasury. It's making its way to you right now, cutting through every obstacle, dissolving every barrier, moving at the speed of divine grace. Do you feel it? That shift in the atmosphere around you, that sense that something is different, even though you can't quite put your finger on what it is. That's not your imagination. That's the sound of breakthrough approaching your address. The same God who opened the Red Sea for Moses is opening impossible doors for you. The same God who multiplied 5 loaves and 2 fish to feed 5,000 people is multiplying your resources right now. The same God who raised Lazarus from the dead is raising your dead dreams, your dead hopes, your dead bank account back to life. You survived the dark nights when you didn't know how you'd make it to morning. You survived the months when every bill felt like a mountain you couldn't climb. You survived the years when it seemed like everybody else was blessed, but you were forgotten. But you weren't forgotten. You were being prepared. Every tear was building your capacity to receive. Every struggle was expanding your ability to hold blessing. Every prayer was creating space in your spirit for the overflow that's coming. What did you used to pray for when no one was around? Say it out loud right now. The angels, remember. They've been working on it this whole time. Comment this in faith. It's already here, I just haven't touched it yet. Because, beloved, the drought is over. The waiting is done. The season of scraping by, of barely making it, of wondering if you'll have enough, that season has expired. You prayed, you cried, you survived. And now, the harvest of every prayer you ever planted in tears is rising from the ground. Your miracle has your name on it, your address in its GPS, and nothing in hell or on earth can stop it from reaching you. But there's something you need to know about what happens when breakthrough finally arrives after years of waiting. Let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. What you think is coming has already started. Right now, as I'm speaking these words, divine forces are moving in your life with surgical precision. You've felt it, haven't you? That strange shift in the atmosphere around you these past few days. You thought it was your imagination. You dismissed it as wishful thinking. But chosen one, what if I told you that God has been quietly rearranging the furniture of your destiny while you've been sleeping? Look back at the last 7 days. I'm serious. Right now, think back. Has there been a moment, maybe just a fleeting second, where you felt an unexplainable peace wash over you while you were worried sick about money? Has someone been unusually kind to you, offered help out of nowhere, or mentioned your name in conversations you weren't even part of? That wasn't coincidence. That was the preview. You see, when heaven decides to fund a life, it doesn't send a memo first. It doesn't wait for you to get your act together. It starts moving. It begins shifting. It initiates before you even realize what's happening. And if you've been sensing something different in your spirit lately, if you wake up some mornings with a strange confidence you can't explain, that's because the prophetic unfolding has already begun. The Bible tells us in Isaiah 46:10, "I make known the end from the beginning." God isn't waiting to see if you're worthy. He declared your provision before you were even born. What you're experiencing right now isn't preparation for blessing. This is the blessing unfolding in real time. But here's what most people miss. They're waiting for the dramatic moment, the burning bush, the parting of the Red Sea. Meanwhile, God is working through the ordinary Tuesday when your electric bill comes in $20 lower than expected. He's moving through the neighbor who suddenly offers to help with your groceries. He's orchestrating through the phone call that brings unexpected good news. You've been looking for miracles in the sky when they've been happening in your living room. If something's been shifting and you can't explain it, type, "I feel it" in the comments right now, because what I'm about to reveal will connect every strange, beautiful, impossible thing that's been happening around you. God doesn't work by clock time. He works by convergence. And chosen one, you have stepped into the convergence zone. Think about Daniel. When he was thrown into the lion's den, the Bible doesn't say God sent angels at the last second. It says in Daniel 6:22, "My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths," past tense. The protection was already active before Daniel even hit the ground. The miracle was in motion before the crisis reached its peak. That's exactly what's happening in your life right now. Your dreams have been coming back, haven't they? Not the nightmares of financial ruin that used to haunt your sleep, but actual dreams. Dreams of possibility. Dreams of provision. Dreams that feel so real you wake up wondering if they were glimpses of what's already been decided in heaven's courtroom. I'll tell you why. Because when God begins funding a life, He starts with the spirit first. He begins rewiring your internal frequency to match the frequency of abundance. Those dreams aren't wishes, they're downloads. They're divine intel being transferred from heaven's database directly into your subconscious mind. But it goes deeper than dreams. Have you noticed how certain people have been gravitating toward you lately? People you barely know, offering help, opportunities, even financial assistance. That's not random kindness. That's what happens when the anointing of provision begins radiating from your life. You become a magnet for divine favor, and people don't even understand why they feel compelled to bless you. Favor isn't just getting what you want. Favor is having what you need show up through people who have no logical reason to help you. Favor is walking into stores and receiving discounts you didn't ask for. Favor is phone calls that change everything, arriving exactly when your faith is about to break. And if you've experienced even one of these things in the past week, you're not imagining it, you're witnessing it. The prophetic unfolding of divine funding has already begun in your life. But here's where it gets really powerful. In Habakkuk 2-3, God says, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry." Do you see what God just revealed? The vision isn't late. Your provision isn't delayed. It's arriving exactly on heaven's schedule. And that schedule is now. This is why you can stop calculating. Stop budgeting from fear. Stop lying awake at night wondering how you'll make it through another month. The funding isn't coming, it's here. It's active. It's working. It's multiplying even as you listen to these words. Some of you are feeling heat in your chest right now. That's not heartburn. That's the Holy Spirit confirming every word I'm speaking over your life. Some of you have tears forming, and you don't even know why. That's because your spirit recognizes truth when it hears it, even when your mind is still catching up. This isn't what's coming, chosen one. This is what's begun. So I have to ask you, knowing what you now know, sensing what you're sensing, feeling what's stirring in your spirit, are you ready to stop fighting this blessing and start receiving it? Because what happens next will either multiply this momentum or cause you to miss the greatest financial miracle of your lifetime. The choice is entirely yours. I know some of you are sitting there thinking, if God is really funding my life, then why does everything feel so impossibly heavy right now? Why am I more anxious at 70 than I was at 30? Why does my spirit feel like it's carrying the weight of the world? Listen to me, dear one. What you're experiencing isn't evidence that God has abandoned you. What you're feeling isn't proof that you've missed your moment or that you're too old for miracles. You're experiencing birthing pains. Right before a womb gives birth, the pressure intensifies not because something's wrong, but because something's ready. The contractions don't mean the baby is dying, they mean the baby is coming. And what's been growing inside you, what God has been forming in the secret place of your spirit, is about to emerge. Have you felt more tired lately? More anxious for no reason? Waking up at 3 a.m. with your heart racing, not from caffeine, but from a deep spiritual stirring you can't quite name? That's not burnout, beloved. That's not your age catching up with you. Those are birthing pains. The enemy knows something's about to shift in your life. He can sense the divine funding that's already in motion. So he's been working overtime to convince you that you're falling apart instead of breaking through. He's been whispering lies. You're too old for this. You should have figured this out by now. Other people your age have it together. But here's what the devil doesn't want you to know. Spiritual warfare always intensifies right before breakthrough. The darker it gets, the closer dawn is. Look at Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Luke 22:44 tells us he was in anguish and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. The Son of God himself, sweating blood from the pressure, but that agony wasn't a sign of defeat. It was the birth canal of salvation. The cross was just hours away, and with it, the greatest victory in human history. You think God didn't know what his Son was feeling in that moment? You think the Father wasn't aware of the crushing weight pressing down on Jesus' spirit? Of course he knew, but he also knew what was coming next. And he knows what's coming next for you. That restlessness you've been feeling, that sense that something's got to give, it's not nervous breakdown energy, it's breakthrough energy. Your spirit recognizes that the old way of living, the old way of worrying, the old way of scraping by is about to be demolished. But demolition always feels chaotic before the rebuilding begins. Maybe you've been having dreams that don't make sense. Maybe you've been getting phone calls at strange times, or finding yourself thinking about people you haven't talked to in years. Maybe you've been drawn to pray at unusual hours, or you've caught yourself humming old hymns you thought you'd forgotten. That's not random. That's divine preparation. God is stirring things up in your atmosphere because he's about to rearrange everything. The financial stress that's been choking your peace, he's loosening that grip. The isolation you've been feeling, he's sending connections. The dreams you buried because they seemed too late, too impossible, too expensive, he's about to resurrect them with full funding attached. But here's the thing about divine intervention, it rarely looks the way we expect it to. When God moved the Israelites out of Egypt, they thought they were going on a 3-day journey. They had no idea they were walking into 40 years of wilderness preparation for a land flowing with milk and honey. When God called Abraham to leave everything familiar, the man was 75 years old. 75. In that culture, Abraham was already considered elderly. But God wasn't looking at his birth certificate. He was looking at his destiny. And he's not looking at your birth certificate either. The heaviness you're carrying isn't punishment for past mistakes. It's not evidence that you've missed your window. That weight you feel is the spiritual equivalent of labor pains. Something divine is pressing against the walls of your current reality, demanding to be born. You know what happens right before a baby is born? The mother reaches a point where she says, "I can't do this anymore. I can't take another contraction." That's called transition. It's the most intense part of labor, but it's also the shortest. And it means the baby is about to crown. You're in transition right now. The anxiety that wakes you up at night, that's your spirit, sensing the shift that's coming. The restlessness that makes you pace the floor, that's divine energy building up inside you, preparing for release. The emotional disorientation you've been experiencing, that's what happens when God starts rearranging your internal landscape to match your external breakthrough. You're not breaking down, you're about to break out. And the beautiful thing about God's timing is this: He never brings you to the delivery room until you're ready to give birth. You may not feel ready. You may look in the mirror and see someone too tired, too old, too broken. But God sees someone who has been prepared through every season, refined through every trial, strengthened through every storm. The weight you've been carrying has been building your spiritual muscles for what's coming next. Have you felt the weight lately? The unexplainable heaviness, the sense that something big is shifting in the spiritual realm? Then you need to understand this, that weight isn't your burden to bear forever. But here's the question that will determine everything. Will you push through the transition, or will you give up right before the breakthrough arrives? Listen, beloved. What I'm about to tell you might shake the very foundation of how you've been walking through life. For decades, you've been tiptoeing through your golden years like you're walking on eggshells, afraid one wrong step might shatter what little security you have left. You've been shrinking yourself to fit into a world that told you your best days are behind you. But that's not God's economy. That's man's limitation. You see, there's something happening in the spirit realm right now that your natural eyes can't see. While you've been calculating every dollar, every prescription copay, every grocery bill, heaven has been calculating something entirely different. God's been adding up your faithfulness, your prayers, your tears shed in secret, your praise through the pain. And the sum total? It's about to overflow into your natural reality. But here's where most people miss it. They're waiting for God to change their circumstances while they keep walking the same old way. They want divine funding, but they're still operating with a poverty mindset. They're praying for breakthrough while still talking breakdown. That stops today. You're not running on retirement anymore. You're running on revelation. You're not surviving on social security alone. You're thriving on sacred supply. The economy that's funding your future isn't based on Wall Street numbers or government benefits. It's based on God's unbreakable promises to those He calls His own. Look at Abraham. When God promised him descendants like the stars, Abraham was 99 years old. 99. Sarah was 90. By every natural standard, their season was over. But God doesn't operate by natural standards. Romans 4:17 tells us God calls those things which do not exist as though they did. Abraham didn't wait to feel young again to believe the promise. He changed how he walked. He moved from the tent of doubt into the palace of faith. And here's what happened. His very footsteps began to carry the weight of divine favor. Every place his feet touched became holy ground, birthing nations. What if I told you your footsteps carry that same potential right now? You've been walking like a victim of circumstances when you should be walking like a victor of covenant. You've been moving like someone who's running out of time when you should be moving. Like someone who's stepping into divine timing. God's already signed off on your future. The provision has been pre-approved. The vault of heaven has been opened in your favor. But you still have to walk through the door. Faith is the check. Obedience is the signature. But here's what terrifies the enemy most about your breakthrough. It's not just about you. When you start walking in divine funding at 65, 70, 75, 80 years old, you become a living testimony that destroys every lie about limitation. Your breakthrough becomes a wrecking ball against ageism, against the spirit of poverty, against the lie that says your usefulness expired with your youth. Do you realize what you're carrying? You're not just walking into personal provision, you're walking into generational transformation. Your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren are watching, and when they see you rise at this stage of life, when they witness divine funding flowing through someone who was supposed to be done, it rewrites their entire understanding of what's possible. But this requires a different kind of walking. You can't shuffle into your destiny. You can't timidly approach what God has boldly promised. When Moses led Israel out of Egypt, he didn't suggest they leave. He declared with authority, "Let my people go." When Joshua faced Jericho's walls, he didn't whisper prayers. He shouted with the voice of someone who knew victory was guaranteed. That's the voice I hear rising in your spirit right now. Not the voice of someone begging for help, but the voice of someone claiming what's already been decreed. Not the voice of limitation, but the voice of divine authorization. Say this with me right now, and I mean out loud. I don't walk the same. I walk funded. Feel that shift in your atmosphere. That's not emotion. That's activation. Type this in the comments right now. I am not who I was. My future has been financed. Because here's the truth that's about to revolutionize your reality. If you change how you walk, God will change where you land. Your posture determines your position. Your confidence level determines your access level. Your faith stride determines your blessing stride. Stop walking like you're apologizing for taking up space. Stop moving like you're grateful for crumbs when God prepared a feast. Stop talking like you're barely hanging on when you're actually about to step into overflow. The enemy wants you to believe your story's ending, but God's about to show you it's just beginning. This isn't your sunset season. This is your sunrise season. The same God who funded Abraham's impossible dream, who bankrolled Moses' exodus, who sponsored David's kingdom, that same God is about to sponsor the most powerful chapter of your life. Your walking papers have been signed in the courts of heaven. Your funding has been approved by the highest authority. Your breakthrough has been scheduled for divine appointment. The only question remaining is this: are you ready to walk into it? Because what happens next will determine if you spend your remaining years counting what you lack or celebrating what you've been given access to. Chosen one, let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. The enemy has been working overtime to stop this very moment from arriving in your life. Right now, as you're listening to these words, there are forces that are absolutely furious that you've made it this far. You think all those setbacks were random. You think all those closed doors, those betrayals, those financial disasters that left you wondering if God had abandoned you, you think those were just bad luck? No, beloved. Those were calculated attacks against your destiny. The devil knew something about your future that you didn't know about yourself. He saw the funding that was coming. He saw the provision that had your name on it. He saw the divine favor that was going to overwhelm your life, and he panicked. So he sent betrayal to your doorstep. Maybe it was a business partner who walked away with your life savings. Maybe it was a spouse who left you broken and questioning your worth. Maybe it was children who turned their backs on you when you needed them most. The enemy whispered lies in the darkness of your bedroom. You're too old for a comeback. Your best years are behind you. You should just accept this struggle and fade quietly. But here's what the devil didn't count on. He didn't realize that every tear you cried was actually a seed being planted in the soil of your future. Every loss you endured was leverage that God was storing up to launch you higher than you've ever been. Romans 8:28 isn't just a pretty verse to cross-stitch on a pillow. It's a prophetic weapon. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. All things, chosen one. Not just the good things, not just the easy things, all things. That diagnosis that scared you, God's turning it into a testimony of his healing power. That bankruptcy that made you feel like a failure, God's using it to teach you how to trust him completely before he releases supernatural abundance. that loneliness that made you question if anyone cares. God was removing the wrong voices so you could clearly hear his voice saying, "I've got something better for you." The enemy tried to shame you into silence. He whispered that you were too old to dream again, too broken to be used, too poor to matter. He pointed to your wrinkled hands and said, "What can these hands build now?" He pointed to your gray hair and said, "Your time has passed." But what he didn't realize is that those wrinkled hands have been through enough battles to know how to hold on to God's promises. That gray hair represents wisdom that can't be bought in any store. Those years you call old, God calls them seasoned for purpose. The devil tried to bury you, beloved. But what he didn't know is that you're not a corpse, you're a seed. And seeds don't die in the dirt, they multiply in it. Every sleepless night you spent worrying about money, that was preparation for appreciation when abundance flows. Every time you had to choose between medication and groceries, that was training for how to steward blessing without taking it for granted. Every moment you felt forgotten by the world, that was God protecting you from premature exposure before you were ready for what he had planned. The enemy sent fear of aging to paralyze you. He showed you younger people succeeding and whispered, "See, you missed your window." But God's got news for the devil. Moses was 80 when he led the greatest exodus in history. Abraham was 100 when he received his promised son. Anna was 84 when she prophesied over the Messiah. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. You've survived enough to know that only God can do what God can do. The enemy tried to use your family's rejection as the final blow. When your own children rolled their eyes at your faith, when they called you too religious, when they made you feel like a burden instead of a blessing, the devil thought that would break you completely. But here's the supernatural truth. Their rejection was actually divine redirection. God was closing those doors of dependence so you could walk through the door of divine independence. You don't need their approval when you have heaven's backing. Comment this loud: "Hell tried to stop me. Heaven said go." Because that's exactly what's happening right now. The enemy spent decades trying to convince you that your best days were over. He used every weapon in his arsenal: sickness, poverty, loneliness, shame, fear, rejection. But God said, "Are you finished? Because I'm about to show you what real power looks like." Right now, in this very moment, there's a divine reversal happening. Every door the enemy slammed shut is being blown off its hinges. Every resource he blocked is being released like a flood. Every opportunity he stole is being restored with interest. Your tears were seeds, chosen one. Your losses were leverage. What tried to bury you became the soil that multiplied your power. The devil thought he was writing your obituary, but God was actually writing your comeback story. List one thing the enemy tried to use to shame you, then say, "But it didn't work." Because it didn't work. You're still here. You're still breathing. You're still believing. And that terrifies the enemy because he knows what's coming next. They tried to cancel you in the wilderness, but God's launching you from the mountain. And from up here, you're going to see just how much funding heaven has been storing up with your name on it. The enemy's worst nightmare is about to become your greatest testimony. Are you ready to step into the season he tried so desperately to stop? Chosen one, as we come to the end of this sacred moment together, I need you to remember 3 unshakable truths that will anchor your soul in the days ahead. First, your worry ends today. Not because your circumstances will magically disappear overnight, but because you now truly know that God is funding your life from this moment forward. Every breath you take is backed by heaven's unlimited resources. Second, your age is not your limitation, it's your authorization. Every wrinkle tells a story of faithfulness. Every gray hair represents wisdom earned through seasons of trusting God when you couldn't see the way. You are not too old for miracles, you are perfectly seasoned for them. Third, what the enemy meant for destruction, God has transformed into the very foundation of your breakthrough. Your tears were not wasted. Your struggles were not meaningless. They were investments in this moment, when divine funding floods every area of your life. But I want you to know something else, dear friend. You are not walking this journey alone. Right now, as I speak these words, there are thousands of others just like you sitting in their living rooms, lying in their beds, standing in their kitchens who have carried the same fears, the same worries, the same questions about whether God still sees them. You are part of a mighty army of believers who refuse to give up, who choose faith over fear, who declare that their best days are not behind them but ahead of them. This community, this family is here to pray with you, to stand with you, to believe with you when your own faith feels shaky. In the comments below, I want you to share one specific thing you're trusting God to fund in your life. Don't hold back. Be bold. Be specific. When you type those words, you're not just commenting, you're making a declaration that activates heaven on your behalf. And watch how this community rallies around your faith, adding their prayers to yours. If someone in your life needs to hear this message, maybe it's a neighbor who's been struggling, a friend at church who's been carrying burdens in silence, or a family member who's lost hope, please share this video with them. Remind them that they are not forgotten, they are not alone, and their breakthrough is closer than they think. Let me ask you this. What would change in your life if you truly believed, not just hoped, but believed that every need you have is already covered by divine provision? How would you walk differently? How would you speak differently? How would you dream differently? Hold that vision in your heart as I pray over you. And before I do, thank you. Thank you for staying with me through this entire message. Thank you for opening your heart to receive what heaven wanted to deposit in your spirit tonight. If this channel has become a source of hope and strength for you, please subscribe and ring that notification bell. You are part of this family now, and we want to continue walking this journey of faith together. Now, let me pray over you with the authority of someone who has seen God's faithfulness for decades. Heavenly Father, I place my hand on the shoulder of every precious soul who has heard this message tonight. I feel their weariness, Lord. I sense the weight they've been carrying, the bills that have kept them awake, the fears that have whispered lies in the darkness. But right now, in the mighty name of Jesus, I speak divine funding over their lives. I declare that every door the enemy has shut is being blown wide open. Every resource that has been withheld is being released like a flood. Every financial blessing that has been delayed is moving toward them at divine speed. Father, breathe peace into their worried hearts. Replace their anxiety with anticipation. Transform their fear into faith. Let them sleep tonight knowing that you are working while they rest, arranging provision while they dream, moving heaven and earth to ensure they lack nothing. Bless their hands to prosper in everything they touch. Bless their minds with divine ideas that generate income. Bless their hearts with unshakable confidence in your faithfulness. And bless their future with such overwhelming abundance that they become a walking testimony of your goodness.